For 3 years, neighbors in Millbrook, Ohio watched elderly Margaret visit her grandson's house every weekend. She was the perfect grandmother, bringing cookies, tending the garden, waving to everyone. But when the Johnson family went on vacation and left their house empty, Margaret still showed up. That's when neighbors realized the shocking truth: Margaret had no grandson. The house wasn't hers. And no one knew who she really was. Before you watch this video, don't forget to subscribe to Beneath Stories, because sometimes the most terrifying threats are hiding in plain sight, right inside your own home. September 2021. Margaret Sinclair appeared to be the ideal grandmother. Every Saturday morning, she arrived at 847 Oak Street in Millbrook, Ohio, carrying homemade cookies and a warm smile. The neighbors loved her. She was in her 70s, well-dressed, always cheerful. She tended the front garden, swept the porch, and waved to everyone who passed by. "Such a devoted grandmother," said next-door neighbor Carol Williams. "Her grandson is so lucky to have someone who cares that much." Margaret's routine was clockwork. Saturday arrival at 9 a.m., Sunday departure at 6 p.m. She brought groceries, did light housework, and maintained the property beautifully. The house at 847 Oak Street had been vacant since early 2021 when the previous owners relocated. But Margaret's presence made it look lived in and loved. Neighbors assumed her grandson worked weekends or traveled frequently. It explained why they only saw Margaret, never the actual resident. Margaret quickly became a neighborhood fixture. She knew everyone's names, remembered their children, and always had time for friendly conversation. "How's your daughter's college search going?" she'd ask Carol Williams. "Is your husband feeling better after his surgery?" she'd inquire to the Patel family across the street. Margaret seemed genuinely interested in neighborhood life. She attended community meetings, participated in holiday decorations, and volunteered for local charity drives. Other residents envied the mysterious grandson who had such a caring relative. "I wish my grandmother was half as involved," teenage Jake Martinez told his friends. Margaret's weekend visits brought stability to Oak Street. Property values remained strong partly because 847 looked so well maintained. The local postal worker, delivery drivers, and service technicians all recognized Margaret as the house's caretaker. She signed for packages and handled maintenance appointments. By spring 2022, a few neighbors noticed minor oddities about Margaret's visits. Real estate agent Linda Foster, who lived 2 doors down, found some details puzzling. Margaret always arrived by taxi but never mentioned transportation difficulties. She was clearly healthy and capable but claimed she didn't drive anymore. "My grandson insists I not drive," Margaret explained. "He worries about my safety." More curious was Margaret's knowledge of the house. During conversations, she referenced renovations and improvements that had occurred years before the previous owners moved in. "The kitchen remodel turned out beautifully," Margaret mentioned to Linda. But Linda remembered the kitchen had been updated in 2018, long before Margaret's grandson supposedly lived there. Carol Williams noticed Margaret had keys to every entrance and seemed familiar with alarm codes and utility shutoffs. "She knows that house better than most people know their own homes," Carol observed. Everything changed in August 2022 when the Martinez family returned early from vacation. They'd been monitoring neighborhood activity through their security cameras and noticed something impossible. Margaret had continued her weekend visits even though the Johnson family at 847 Oak Street was supposed to be away on a 2-week European trip. "Wait," said Elena Martinez, reviewing the footage. "If her grandson is traveling, why is Margaret still coming to the house?" The security camera timestamps showed Margaret arriving Saturday morning as usual, spending the entire weekend, and departing Sunday evening, exactly as she had for over a year. Elena called Carol Williams. "Have you seen anyone at the Johnson place? I thought they were traveling." "What Johnson place?" Carol replied, confused. "You mean Margaret's grandson's house? He must be back early." That's when they realized none of them had ever actually seen Margaret's grandson or knew his name. They'd all assumed he existed based on Margaret's presence. Elena Martinez decided to investigate. She approached the house Monday morning when Margaret wasn't there. The property appeared completely vacant, no cars in the driveway, no lights on, mail piling up at the door. She called the property management company listed on a small sign in the yard. The representative confirmed the house had been empty since January 2021 and was available for rent. No one has lived there for over a year, the agent explained. We've had several interested renters, but no one has signed a lease. Elena felt chills. If the house was empty, who was Margaret visiting? How did she have keys? Why had she been maintaining an abandoned property? Elena shared her findings with other neighbors. They gathered that evening to discuss the situation, realizing they'd all been deceived for over a year. She talked about her grandson's job, his girlfriend, his travel schedule, said Carol Williams. She made him seem so real. The neighbors decided to approach Margaret during her next visit. Saturday morning, they waited for her usual 9 a.m. arrival. Margaret appeared as always, cheerful, carrying a grocery bag and flowers for the garden. She greeted everyone warmly as she unlocked the front door. "Margaret," Elena Martinez said carefully. "We need to talk. We discovered this house is vacant. There's no tenant registered here." Margaret's expression didn't change. She continued arranging flowers in the front planter. "I don't understand what you mean, dear." "We called the property management company," Linda Foster added. "No one lives here." "Who are you visiting?" Margaret stood slowly, brushing dirt from her hands. "My grandson is very private. He doesn't like attention or questions from neighbors." "What's his name?" Carol Williams asked directly. Margaret hesitated for the first time. "David. David Sinclair. He travels frequently for work." But none of them had ever seen David, received mail for him, or heard any sounds from the house during weekdays. The neighbors contacted police, who arrived that afternoon while Margaret was still at the house. Officer James Rodriguez questioned her about her relationship to the property. Margaret maintained her story about visiting her grandson, but couldn't provide his contact information, employment details, or explanation for why the house was officially vacant. Police ran Margaret's identification. Her name was indeed Margaret Sinclair, age 74, but her address was listed as Sunset Manor Assisted Living Facility in nearby Canton, Ohio. When officers contacted Sunset Manor, they learned Margaret had been reported missing 3 years earlier. She disappeared from the facility in September 2021 and hadn't been seen since. Her family has been searching for her, reported facility director Nancy Walsh. Margaret has moderate dementia and sometimes becomes confused about where she lives. Margaret's actual family was contacted. Her daughter Jennifer Sinclair arrived within hours, crying with relief and confusion. Jennifer Sinclair explained her mother's condition and disappearance. Margaret had lived at Sunset Manor for 2 years but frequently became agitated and insisted she needed to go home to take care of her family. "Mom raised her children in a house very similar to this one," Jennifer explained. "Same style, same layout, probably built around the same time. Her dementia made her believe she still lived there." Margaret had apparently walked away from the assisted living facility during a group outing to the local shopping center. Security footage showed her getting into a taxi, but staff assumed she was with family. "We searched everywhere," Jennifer said. "We filed police reports, hired a private investigator, posted on social media. We never imagined she was living somewhere else, pretending to have a different life." The family had been devastated by Margaret's disappearance, fearing she was lost, injured, or worse. Learning she'd been safe and cared for by unknowing neighbors was both relieving and heartbreaking. Police investigation revealed how Margaret had survived for 3 years. She'd been living at the vacant house full-time, not just weekends as neighbors believed. Margaret had broken in shortly after her disappearance, probably mistaking the house for her childhood home. The property management company had changed locks recently, but Margaret had learned to bypass the simple security system. She maintained the facade of weekend visits to avoid suspicion. During weekdays, she stayed inside and out of sight. The house's location at the end of a cul-de-sac made her deception easier. Margaret had been using Social Security benefits automatically deposited to her account. She withdrew cash for groceries and taxi rides, living frugally but independently. The house's utilities were still connected from the previous tenant, and Margaret paid the bills using money from her account. Property managers assumed the former tenant was handling final payments. Mental health professionals evaluated Margaret to understand her condition and decision-making during the missing years. Dr. Patricia Chen, a geriatric psychiatrist, found her case fascinating and tragic. Margaret's dementia caused her to confabulate, create false memories and narratives to fill gaps in her understanding, Dr. Chen explained. The grandson's story was her mind's way of justifying her presence at the house. Margaret genuinely believed her stories about David's career, travels, and life. Her dementia made these fabrications feel completely real to her. She wasn't intentionally deceiving anyone, Dr. Chen noted. She was trying to make sense of her situation with a compromised memory and confusion about time and place. Margaret's friendly, social behavior with neighbors fulfilled her need for human connection while maintaining the illusion that her living situation was normal and legitimate. The case highlighted how people with dementia can appear functional while experiencing significant cognitive impairment and disorientation. The Millbrook neighborhood struggled with conflicting emotions about Margaret's deception. Many residents felt sympathy for her condition while grappling with being unknowingly complicit in her disappearance. She seemed so happy and content, Carol Williams reflected. I never imagined she was lost and confused. I thought I was just being friendly to a nice elderly lady. The community organized support for Margaret's family and donated to dementia awareness organizations. They felt guilty about not questioning Margaret's story more thoroughly. Property management companies in the area implemented additional security measures and more frequent property inspections to prevent similar situations. The case prompted discussions about community responsibility for vulnerable residents and the importance of reporting unusual situations to authorities. Local assisted living facilities strengthened their security protocols and tracking systems for residents with cognitive impairments. Margaret was returned to professional care at an upgraded memory care facility. Her family chose a location closer to their home for more frequent visits and better monitoring. She's safe now, but she still asks about her house and her grandson David, Jennifer Sinclair reported. The delusions are part of her condition. We can't convince her they weren't real. Margaret adapted well to her new environment but continued to believe she had responsibilities at Oak Street. Staff learned to redirect her concerns rather than argue with her altered reality. The house at 847 Oak Street was eventually rented to a young family. New tenants were briefed about Margaret's situation in case she attempted to return. Margaret's 3-year disappearance had a lasting impact on her family, who learned to better understand and accommodate her dementia-related behaviors. The case became a training example for law enforcement and healthcare workers about missing persons with cognitive impairments and the importance of community awareness. For the Millbrook neighbors, Margaret's story was a reminder that people's lives are often more complicated than they appear. The friendly grandmother they'd grown to love was real, but so was the confused, lost woman who needed help finding her way home. Margaret's weekend visits had given her purpose and community connection during her years of confusion. While her methods were problematic, her need for belonging and routine was completely human and understandable. The story serves as a poignant reminder about the vulnerability of elderly people with dementia and the importance of community vigilance in protecting those who may be lost but appear to be managing independently. Thank you for watching this investigation into Margaret's weekend visitor mystery. Subscribe to Beneath Stories for more cases revealing the disturbing realities that can hide behind normal suburban facades. Because sometimes the greatest threats to our safety come not from outside our homes, but from the hidden spaces within the walls we trust to protect us.